BBC Aggie Chambray. So very good morning to both of you. Inevitably, a lot of fallout from Friday's extraordinary day in Westminster still making it onto the front pages of the Sunday papers after Angela Rayner's resignation and the reshuffle. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph. Aggie, you've picked this out. So this is the suggestion that off the back of this reshuffle, we're going to get a few announcements. What are they suggesting here?
That's right. So Shabana Mahmood was one of the big names moved in the reshuffle on Friday. She was Justice Secretary. She is now Home Secretary. And the kind of briefing that came out of that was, look, Shabana Mahmood is a bit more radical than Yvette Cooper. She's a bit more on the right of the party. And she is seen as somebody. She was very effective in her previous role in solving, actually not solving, but getting some... Addressing, that's right, the prisons crisis, which is very much still a crisis. So these stories in the Sunday papers today about what she is planning to do or looking at doing in the Home Office now she's taken charge of that department. And so the big lines out of this is she is looking at putting migrants in asylum seeker in barracks on former military bases, on basically Ministry of Defence land, rather than in asylum hotels. And one of the lines out of this is Keir Starmer wants asylum hotels closed. At the moment, it's been said they're going to be closed by 2029. He's basically saying, want it done before 2029. So these are various ways she is looking at to do this. But it's all part of this big reshuffle as well within the Home Office too. So 2 junior ministers have been axed from the department, 2 other junior ministers in. So that is part of it. And also the Sunday Telegraph and actually the Sunday Times report that there is a deal, a one-in, one-out deal with Germany that actually is on the cards too as well.
Following the one-in, one-out deal with France, of course. And that kind of implies, doesn't it, Zoe, that a lot of this work would have been done by Shabana Mahmood's predecessor, Yvette Cooper, of course, in the run-up to this, but it'll be Shabana Mahmood that gets to announce it.
Yes, absolutely. I think what is quite interesting in some of the other papers, obviously there's a lot of reporting on the reshuffle, and I think it's in The Observer, they're talking about some conflict between Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, this feeling that the previous Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, had not actually achieved very much when it came to immigration, and there was a lot of frustration there about getting it done. And actually, it was very interesting. When this government was first formed, there was a lot of conversation about Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves would be the sort of kingmaker as to whether Labour would see another 5 years in power, because, of course, usually it's all about the economy. But because immigration has crept up voters' priorities, now so much rides on the Home Secretary's ability to deal with immigration. And therefore, for the Shabana Mahmood, this is a massive role where she'll really have to make her mark. And yes, you can tinker with the ECHR, which is what she's planning to do. You can move migrants around. You could change where they stay while their claims are being processed. But ultimately, it is very unlikely that Labour is going to be able to out-Farage in terms of rhetoric on this. And actually, I think what is really necessary is not just the ECHR, not just finding places to live, but to look at things like safe and legal routes, to look at speeding up processing claims, and to continue to make that positive case for immigration as well, because otherwise you're just going to increase the salience of it and scare voters.
And on that issue of the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, let's turn to the Sunday Times, because they pick up on this, don't they? Because their suggestion is that, again, as you were implying, Zoe, the government is essentially trying to take on Nigel Farage and be tough on immigration, rather than, as you say, make the case for it.
That's right. So the Sunday Times reporting this morning that another thing Shabana Mahmood is looking at is overhauling human rights, reforming the ECHR. That's something that's been talked about now for a little while, with various cabinet ministers actually being in favour of that. But I think this comes down as well to Shabana Mahmood being seen as this more radical person who is willing to make these changes. And to Zoe's point, I think annoying and upsetting lots of different people within the Labour Party, because I think what this new, shiny cabinet is more to the right. The entire cabinet is more to the right. People from the soft left have either been demoted or lost their jobs. And that, I think, is them basically saying we're going to unapologetically be harsher on immigration. We're going to make these things stricter in the vain hopes that that is going to work and that's going to kind of wash with the British public. Because when I speak to people within government, they talk about those pictures of people coming over in small boats and basically say that it's kind of impossible to win the next election unless something is done about that.
Well, yeah, but there was a time when a lot of people in Labour would have been outraged at the idea of even looking at the ECHR, and also didn't like the idea of migrants being put in these disused barracks. They were saying it was a bit like putting them in prison, wasn't it? And they shut down the Bibi Stockholm, the barge, when they came into power. So it would be quite a shift, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this shows actually some lessons weren't learned from Rishi Sunak's time in government as Prime Minister, because he made the small boats such a priority. He thought this would be something that could very easily be fixed. And actually, as we've seen, once again, it's not an easy fixable problem, because the small boats crisis is just another iteration of the broader issues with migration flows that are only going to get worse as you have all these destabilising factors across the globe. The small boats, it is something we've seen rise since Brexit, partly because we don't have those returns agreement in place, partly because of the government not properly dealing with loopholes in labour laws. It is a very visceral image. You know, when people see people coming over on boats, they can see that previously we had irregular migration in the back of lorries and things like that. But I think there's something about the optics of the small boat crisis which really concern voters. And that is something that's very, very difficult to get a grip on, because it is just another way we are seeing that migration issue play out. And, you know, even if you clamp down on small boats, you are still going to get people trying to enter the country on different means.
And I think it's about fairness as well. I think people within government are thinking more and more about fairness. And I think that's the way they are thinking about the small boats crisis, and thinking that people are in their towns, in their cities, feeling like they're worse off. They've got less money in their pockets. On the high street, it's looking more and more dilapidated. And then at the same time, they're seeing people coming over in small boats, and they feel that that is unfair. They're paying more and more in, getting less and less out.
And they feel they've been put up in luxury hotels and being looked after and given stuff free and jumping queues.
Yeah, and some of it's not true. Some of it, you know, some of it is not true, but some of it is true, and it is about that feeling of unfairness, and that's something the government wants to tackle. But whether or not they're going to be able to tackle it, and how far they're going to try and out Farage, I mean, we're going to have to see, but we're seeing a taste of it today.
Well, yeah, and let's turn to The Observer, because they have drawn all this together, their headline focusing on Angela Rayner. And Andrew Rawnsley has written a piece for the paper, Who Speaks for the Left Now, which kind of ties in with what you were saying, that there's a sense of a movement to the right, certainly in some offices and departments.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Obviously, there is now a concern that, you know, really, Angela Rayner was this Labour government's anchor to the soft left and to power, and she had that relationship with the unions, that relationship with a lot of Labour's core voters who might not be particularly impressed with the government's shift to the right. And with Rayner gone, there does seem to be this vacuum. And as Aggie was saying, it does seem like this new government is more of a shift towards the right, being a lot stronger on things like immigration. And, you know, there is going to do. Already we know there is disquiet in the party about the current Labour leadership's approach to these issues. Without Angela Rayner there as a kind of moderating force, there is concern that this could lead to civil war within the Labour Party. We know that there is a lot of factional infighting that is inherent to Labour's identity. And we, you know, for example, if you take the welfare proposed benefit cuts, Angela Rayner was ringing round MPs and ministers trying to get people to kind of buy into the government's vision on this. She has been that voice for rebel backbenchers who haven't been impressed with the leadership. So it does present what looks like a quite dicey future for the Labour leadership with trying to get the left on board.
Well, yeah, that's right. And should there be a left-leaning deputy leader elected, could that cause problems again for Keir Starmer, do you think?
Yeah, that could cause absolutely huge problems. And it's not even when we get to that point that huge problems could be caused, because then before that, we've got to have a deputy leadership election. And if you think about how unpopular Keir Starmer is with Labour members, you can imagine the way senior Labour figures are going to try and ingratiate themselves with the members is to pick apart what's gone wrong up to this point, and also criticise Keir Starmer, saying, I'm going to be the person to hold him to account. And if you're going to have, I'm not suggesting Shabana Mahmood's going to go on the airways and criticise Keir Starmer, but she's one of the people who might be running. Yeah. And there could be really, really senior people running for that position. And I think it is going to be very, very difficult, potentially toxic for Keir Starmer.
One to watch. We're out of time. See you next hour. Thanks both very much indeed.
Thank you.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent.